This video is dedicated to James Humphreys. James, thank you. The Jolly Balloon Man versus Braids, Teysa and Omnath. A slow 3-lander, but we can potentially catch up with the ramp and removal. It's a bit slow, but we'll keep it. It's not as though we're going to draw into any fast mana. Not as likely anyway. Just seeing lands from our opponents, and if I'd drawn into a land there I wouldn't have gone for the Witch Enchanter, but I think I'm just going to play this in as a tap land. Don't want to have to bolt that in if I don't have to. Argument to be made for waiting another turn though. But we might draw into a Talisman or something. Drew into a Wear and Tear. The first spell we see is Bloodghast for the Teysa player. Can easily be abused with sack outlets. And speaking of getting sack fodder into play, Jadar, Gulcaller of Nephalia, comes down for Braids. Alright, draw into another tap land, so we could hold up the Wear on Wear and Tear, but we'll just save ourselves some life. Maybe our opponent will get down a Sylvan Library that we want to blow up with the single white mana that we've held up here. No Sylvan Library, instead we see Druid of the Cowl, so I do wonder if they've gone for Elf Tribal. Not a mana dork that you see very often. Teysa Orzhov Scion, the first commander to hit play, and Bloodghast can't block, so it might as well swing in, trying to get one of these creatures to block. Actually, I don't think Decayed creatures can block, can they? No, they can't. See the second commander in a row. I don't think we're going to be getting ours down next turn. I'm leaning towards the Enduring Innocence at the moment. 1/1 comes in to hit us, and they decide to keep hold of their Decayed Zombie, so I'm assuming that they're going to sacrifice that to Braids. Might actually play into the Teysa player's hand here. Could sacrifice the Bloodghast in order to make a Spirit, and he does, so Bloodghast likely to come out next turn to landfall. Teysa will replace it with a Spirit, and Braids goes up to 8 cards in hand. And Urza's Saga, okay, so we could just start the countdown on that. Yeah, we'll go for that. And play out the Enduring Innocence. Yeah, we're the ones breaking the chain here. Bunch of 3-mana commanders, and we're the only one not to play ours. 6 cards left in Omnath's hand, and deciding to float the green mana straight away from the dork. A Mystifying Maze is going to reanimate the Bloodghast. The Spirit swings in at Braids this time, and the 2/3 comes in towards us, so we'll take 2 commander damage. Sacred Mesa after that. So sacrifice it unless you sacrifice a Pegasus at the beginning of your upkeep. This is an old school card for Teysa. So for 2 mana you can make a Pegasus token, and you have to consistently try to keep those in play. Vat of Rebirth always shows up with Braids, followed by Wayfarer's Bauble. 5 cards left in hand. And it looks as though he's cracking the Bauble in order to do the Rampant Growth, so a counter goes onto the Vat of Rebirth. The 3/3 goes in against the Orzhov player, and the 1/1 does as well, so not going to be holding back any blockers over there. So putting the zombie into play first from Jadar, so that he can sacrifice it to Braids, so Braids resolves last. We will not go for sacrificing our creature, so we take 2 life. Vat of Rebirth continuing to get counters on it over here. And once again the Bloodghast is going to be sacrificed to make a Spirit, so have to hope that Teysa keeps up on landfall. Alright, Elite Spellbinder is a good one to be copying with our commander. I'm not going to make use of the constructs with Urza's Saga, because I think we're going for as many planes into play as possible, just in case we draw into Emeria the Sky Ruin. So we'll make use of the Scampering Surveyor, a weaker version of Solemn Simulacrum. And then in order to gain back a little bit of life, because we're not going to be blocking with the Elemental here, or the Sheep Glimmer, it's not an Elemental. Let's go in towards Braids, regain a little bit of this life. One mana was floating during the beginning of the turn for Omnath, and now can tap down 5 for a total of 6 mana. And Omnath is a 7/7, so commander damage is a real threat. Deciding to spend the mana immediately, he didn't need to do that, he could have swung in first. Maybe he's just going to hold it back as a blocker, just throwing out a bunch of dorks is risky. Okay, does decide to swing in and comes in towards us for 4 points of commander damage. So we assume that during the upkeep our opponent is going to make a Pegasus token just to keep this in play. He's only got 1 white mana though, so this is effectively just a tax that's out here for no good reason at the moment. Reassembling Skeleton out after that, so that's going to be a good blocker. Does seem to be missing a land drop though. The 2-3 goes in towards Braids. The mono black player throws out an Ugin's Nexus, so we'll assume that he's about to take an extra turn. So now not swinging in with Braids, I'll assume, because we've got a 3-2 in play. Although could have swung in against the mana dorks here. Anyway, Jadar makes a zombie token. Braids, we assume, is going to sacrifice the big artifact. He does. We're going to continue to take damage and go below 30. Seeing what I assume is discarded hand size, there's a land in there and a grafted war gear as well. 8 cards in hand at the beginning of the turn. He makes his 7th land into a Spine of Issar, and that is pointed at the Teysa. He's worried that there's going to be another spirit created here in order to exile the Braids. Could sacrifice the Teysa to its own ability though, because obviously Teysa is a white creature and does decide to do that, so in response Braids gets exiled. That's good for us, it clears 2 boards out a little bit. And the Decayed Zombie swinging in, might as well if it's going to get replaced at the end of the turn anyway. Swings in at the Teysa player. So we're about to upgrade the Urza's Saga to a Sol Ring. Alright, there's a Village Bellringer. Don't think we can quite combo off yet. With Urza's Saga on the stack, we will tap it for mana. And we've got 3 choices there, but we'll go for the Sol Ring. So play a land for the turn. And then we can go for Troubling Pairs and our commander activated for some more ramp onto this, I suppose. Let's go for the commander first, because we might draw into something that changes our mind. So trigger the Enduring Innocence, because it's a small creature entering. The Orzhov player holding up priority, so not sure if he's got some kind of free interaction available to him. A Snuff Out or something like that. We can hold on to the Esper Sentinel for now, I think, because a Troubling Pairs should draw us a decent number of cards. So let's go for the Scampering Surveyor now, because we can only do this at sorcery speed. We've got a bunch of white cards in hand, and plus we want to get up to 7 planes as soon as possible, just in case, like I said before. So we'll grab ourselves a planes with the 1/1 Flying Haste version of the Surveyor. And then we've got 1 mana floating, so we'll have to use it now. Go for the Troubling Pairs with its weird plagiarised art. Did you all see the controversy online with that? Apparently this is a bunch of plagiarised art all kind of shoved together. Alright, so we might as well swing in. Let's take this in to the left. It's going to get sacrificed anyway. Like I keep saying, we're not going to block with the Enduring Innocence, I don't think. Although maybe it would be better as a blocker. Might dissuade this player from swinging in towards us, and if he does swing in with a big Omnath, it might be best to have a big blocker, so yeah, I won't go in with the lifelinker. 3 green mana floating for the Omnath player, by the way, and has a bunch of dorks in play, so see what we can do with 5 cards next turn. 12 mana floating for Omnath, hopefully it doesn't get trample. A 13/13 currently. See if they swing in with it while it's as big as it can be. No, they're spending mana. Revenge of the Hunted, +6/+6 and trample. And yeah, swings in towards us, so we're going to have to block anyway. So as much as I wanted to save the Stroke of Midnight to get rid of Braids again, might have to just use it on the Omnath player. Enduring Innocence comes back as an enchantment at least. Just saving his 6 mana and 3 cards in hand, so could have a means of hexproof onto the Omnath. Again, a Pegasus being made by... I don't know why our opponent's thrown this down so early. If you've got a surplus of mana, then it's potentially good, but I think nowadays we're going back about 10 years when this was a decent card in Commander. Wayfarer's Bauble, he could have cracked that this turn and made himself another white mana if he hadn't been insistent on keeping this in play. So we'll assume that Braids is going to come back into play here. Haven't seen any 2s into the Troubling Pairs yet. They need to attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a second card or cast a second spell. A Burglar Rat, each opponent discards a card. I think it's going to have to be the Wear and Tear for us, not seeing too much use for it yet. A Forest discarded here, taking Omnath down to 2. And a Myojin of Knight's Reach for the Orzhov player. Then the second spell being cast is Braids for 5 mana. Troubling Pairs will draw us a card. And that is a Sundial of the Infinite for us, so we can keep hold of the tokens if we want to. Then the Decayed Zombie swinging in on its own down the middle. So it seems as though it's the 2 black players versus the Boros and the green player so far. Vat of Rebirth now going to have 4 counters on it at the end of combat. They don't have anything to reanimate with that though. Although it is 4 counters. Yeah, 4 oil counters they need on this to make it relevant. Just deciding to end the turn, so we'll see if they sacrifice the spine or not. Yep, they do decide to sacrifice that, so it'll go back to their hand. We will not get rid of the Soul Ring, taking us below half of our starting life total now. But they draw a second card for the turn, so Troubling Pairs draws us again. Probably the best mono white card draw spell there is, this one. Gets us into a land for next turn. And then round to our turn we get a Wayfarer's Bauble as well. Play a land. And I think I want to see what the mono green player's holding up, to be honest, so we'll go for the Elite Spellbinder looking over there. The Omnath player is very eager to be getting rid of us apparently. We're at 14 points of commander damage. And there we go. We assume that they had a Tamiyo Safekeeping. There's a Cogwork Assembler as well. Create a token that's a copy of a target artifact. Not sure what they're going after with that, but we'll get rid of their Safekeeping. Then we'll make a copy of the Elite Spellbinder. We'll have a look at Braids' hand as well. And this will trigger another card draw from the Enduring Innocence, because they always enter as 1/1s. It's noteworthy that Tamiyo Safekeeping will still be able to be played. It's just that they have to spend 2 extra for this, I think. Yeah, costs 2 more to cast. Shouldn't be too difficult for Omnath. You don't seem to be doing anything else, really. So there we see a Blood Artist, Mycosynth Wellspring, the Spine, Charcoal Diamond, Midnight Reaper, and Treacherous Blessing. I think we'll just target the Spine of Issar here. Make them pay 9 for it. Alright, drawing into another land, so Stroke of Midnight will just have to force our opponent to use that. Use the Safekeeping, I mean. Could go for the Sundial of the Infinite here in order to keep this in play as a chump blocker. That means that we're not holding up the Stroke of Midnight, but it's not of much use to us anyway, apart from forcing them to use this, like I said. Yeah, let's go for the Esper Sentinel here. Worst case scenario, we just have to chump block with that. Then we'll play out Sundial of the Infinite, and with those end of turn abilities on the stack we can go Sundial of the Infinite, just ending the turn, which will remove that, and the Elite Spellbinder will stay in play. So now it's not infinite, but we can set up something with Village Bellringer next turn if we've got a decent amount of mana. We'll be able to make a few copies of these, untap our commander every time, and unfortunately, unlike with Kiki Jiki, we do have to pay for our commander. But if we hold up a single mana at the end of the turn, we'll be able to keep all our copies of this at least. Llanowar Visionary, we know what our opponent drew into this turn. Draws a card when it enters. The commander is a 13/13. Draws his second card into our Troubling Pairs, which is yet another land. I think there were 3 of those on top. Deathgloom Gardener is the second spell that he's cast, so another mana dork into the Knight of the White Orchid. And we know the artifact that he's got in his hand. Alright, so Omnath going into the right this time. That means that we can keep our flying chump blocker at least. Blocking with Burglar Rat. Decides to play the last card from his hand. Noteworthy that they can copy any artifact with this. Once again, that Sacred Mesa. Desperate to keep it in play for some reason. Makes a Pegasus token just to sacrifice it. Just passes through the turn, so we'll assume that that's to crack the Wayfarer's Bauble. Mind Stone is the first trigger on the Esper Sentinel, and does decide to pay the tax on Esper Sentinel. We're going to draw from the Troubling Pairs here anyway. Braids likes to get down lots of small spells. We're going to be drawing from the Troubling Pairs anyway. Braids likes to cast lots of small spells. Charcoal Diamond triggers the Troubling Pairs. Draws us into Ashnod's Altar, so with that we've got infinite enter and death triggers with the Village Bellringer, but that doesn't really do anything for us. Does do something for our opponent's Blood Artist though. Treacherous Blessing after that. We've seen all these cards in our opponent's hand, he's got 2 left. So when that enters he draws 3 cards, which triggers the Troubling Pairs again, because he's drawn into his second card for the turn. Which means this time we see AO, the Dawn Sky, and the Decayed 2/2 swings in towards us. So I'm not sure if they're going to sacrifice a creature or an artifact here. It might be worth giving up on the Esper Sentinel. We either take 2 to this, or we might get drained for 1 by the Blood Artist, so I'll just risk taking the 2 here. Yeah, Blood Artist is pointed at us as well, so yeah, maybe should have blocked that. We go down to 16. Then Jadar makes a Decayed token. And we'll see what card type he's going to sacrifice with the Braids here. Decides to sacrifice an enchantment, so yeah, do we just give up on the Enduring Innocence? I think that's fine. Might be that we're looking to get card advantage from the AO now anyway. 9 lands the mono black player has to our 5, 6, 7, so might be worth going for Knight of the White Orchid, seeing as how it's kind of only going to cost us 1 mana. And it is another chump blocker for us. Alright, we draw into a Wheel of Fortune. I don't see that that's going to be of too much use to us. So let's go Knight of the White Orchid. And we'll make that a dual land. Which leaves us with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. 9 once we play a land. I don't think I'm going to make a copy of the Knight of the White Orchid here. So we'll play a Plains, leaving us at 6 Plains. So just one more for that Emeria, which I don't think is going to be of any relevance. Let's play AO, the Dawn Sky, and see what happens. Make a copy of that with our commander. And this cycle of creatures has a dying trigger, so we choose which one to keep. We'll keep the original. Wouldn't make sense to keep the token copy that's going to go down anyway. So when it dies, we choose one. We can put plus counters on everything. Yeah, if we have a lifelinker, that might be good, but we'll look at the top 7 cards and see if there's anything to grab for free. We get Blood Artist pointed at us again. So basically, it looks like a board wipe is going to take us down here. Alright, Skyclave Apparition's really good. We can go straight at that Blood Artist. We cleared a bunch of lands off the top there. So you can see the idea. We've been quite slow this game, but you can see the idea with Jolly, that we want to get these great ETBs into play so that we can really start to abuse them and untap Jolly and do it multiple times a turn. So I think it's just a case of holding up the Stroke of Midnight, really. Failing that, we can always crack the Wayfarer's Bauble. So we just have to hope that Omnath doesn't draw into any trample, really. Not sure if there's any artifacts he can really make use of yet. I don't think there is. Pluses up his commander to an 18-18. 0 cards in hand though, so he's not even bluffing. I assume he got into a land. I think he had 5 before. Swings in down the middle. And the Orzhov player decides to scoop after doing nothing for multiple turns. Not sure what that was about with all the Pegasus tokens. Braids, as ever, has a full grip, so taps down a bunch of mana and then decides to untap it. And that is a Massacre Girl, so yeah, they had the board wipe into the Blood Artist. So let's just count all the creatures and assume that that's the number of minuses that we're going to get. I'm just trying to see if Omnath goes down here. Yeah, it's 17 creatures that are going to die, and this is an 18-18. So the Emeria might be more relevant than we thought it was going to be. I really wanted to go for this Stroke of Midnight onto the Braids, but we'll try and force our opponent to go for the Tamiyo's Safekeeping finally here. A Tamiyo's Safekeeping will assume that he's going to go for the Esper Sentinel as well, although doing this has debuffed his commander as well, so either way, we've done the right thing in taking his commander down to Massacre Girl. Managed to get rid of that Safekeeping as well. We'll get an AO trigger on the way out at least. Skyclave Apparition gives our opponent a 2-2, so that should go down as well. They put their triggers on the stack first, and then we put Skyclave Apparition on top, which is relevant. And with the AO, we'll look at the top cards of our library. We'll have to be careful not to put creatures into play unless we can find anything that is decent enough to have a good ETB and have it die straight away, because there's still a bunch of minus triggers on the stack ready to resolve. Alright, Anointed Procession is actually... that does actually make infinite with the Village Bellringer and Ashnod's Altar, but we've lost our commander now. We'll get that into play anyway, because Welcoming Vampire is just going to die. It's noteworthy that Braids has been left in the bin, so it's probably going to be reanimated by the Vact. So that puts Omnath in an awkward position. He's in top deck mode and has absolutely no board whatsoever. This is the risk you run with running a bunch of mana dorks. At least we don't get any attacks this turn. No activation on the Vat of Rebirth. So, what are you holding up for 7 mana? Well, straight after a board wipe, there's a Sun Titan. So we could go for the Skyclave Apparition onto the Vat of Rebirth and leave their Braids stuck. I think that's going to be the best thing to do here. So that successfully enters and reanimates the Skyclave Apparition. We will exile this. It did nothing really because they didn't use it for whatever reason. I'm assuming in the next turn cycle we're going to find out. Did we just get our commander down here? Make a couple of copies of Sun Titan? I think Braids has some spot removal for us, but if they want to use it on Jolly here, we'll be able to Sun Titan before they're able to use it, because we can only do this as a sorcery, but we've got priority once it enters, so as long as we don't do anything else or add any triggers to the stack upon entry, then they can't do anything about this. What they can do is respond to the triggers. Unfortunately, we don't have the single mana to keep the 2 Sun Titans in play with Sundial of the Infinite. But let's see here, we've got 2, 4, 8, 10 lands. They've got 7, 8, 9 and 10 as well, so yeah, the Knight of the White Orchid isn't going to do anything. Elite Spellbinder, oh, and that plays Scoops, alright. Probably because they forgot to reanimate their Braids. So let's go for, instead then, Esper Sentinel onto the stack. Turns out Sun Titan was a hell of a top deck, as was the Anointed Procession. We'll go for Enduring Innocence onto the stack on top of that, so that it will see the Esper Sentinel enter. So Enduring Innocence enters, and we draw a card into a land, and yeah, not likely that Omnath is going to come back from that. It's going to take him a while to not only get his commander out again, but then start floating enough mana to actually do something. All the while, we're probably starting to make more and more Sun Titans that will actually keep in play. Although we could have comboed off next turn with the Bell Ringer and the Ashnod's Altar, so next turn we go wide on our opponent anyway, most likely. Don't think they're going to do anything about that in mono green. So I thought that was Braids' game to win there, and I think it still could have been, I'm not sure. I'm just assuming it was a mistake that he left his commander in play when he could have reanimated it. But glad I got to show you the Jolly Balloon Man, so hopefully you all enjoyed it, and a big thank you to the patrons for their financial support of the channel as well. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.